There's a particular sound a house makes at 2 in the morning when the weather isn't finished with it yet. Not the rain. The other one. That slow, uneven tap of water finding the bottom of a plastic bucket, changing pitch as the bucket fills. And above it, somewhere in the paint, a ring spreading across the ceiling, tan in the middle, going brown at the edge, wider every time you look up. Most people do the same reasonable thing that night. Put something under it, wait for the sky to quiet down, and then first thing, make the drip stop. Now picture two houses that had exactly that night. Same failure up top, same bucket. 10 years later, one has a dry ceiling and a bill from that week that never went past a few $100s. The other paid less at first, then around the 4th or 5th season paid to replace decking, insulation, framing, the ceiling, and much of the roof above it. What separated them was what got done afterward. Nearly every expensive mistake starts with the same mental picture. A waterproof lid stretched over the house with a hole in it somewhere. A sloped roof is a shedding system, built in layers, where every piece overlaps the piece below it. Shingles overlap shingles. Shingles overlap the underlayment, and flashing overlaps and is overlapped by both. Water is expected to arrive, travel a short distance downhill, and leave. There are second and third chances built into that assembly on purpose, which is why one damaged shingle usually doesn't leak at all. The other half of the design matters just as much, and nobody thinks about it while a bucket fills. That assembly also needs a chance to dry. Air moves through a vented attic, wood gives moisture back, and a roof that stays wet long enough begins losing strength below a surface that may still look fine. The 5 fixes coming up do not all fail in the same way. Some block drainage or drying. Some crack, peel, or punch new holes. Others simply cover the symptom while the failed flashing or boot keeps admitting water. What connects them is that they make the drip disappear without restoring the layered path that was supposed to carry rain off the house. There's also one fact about roof leaks that changes what all 5 of these do to a house. It won't mean much until the rest is in place, so hold on to this much. That ring on your ceiling is not a map. The first fix is the one almost everybody reaches for. Asphalt roof cement, plastic roof cement, the black terry stuff in the tube or the gallon can sold under names that promise exactly what you want at 2 in the morning. Cheap, sticky, waterproof on day 1, and roofers carry it, which makes it feel like permission. So a trowel comes out and a generous layer goes over the suspect area of the shingle field. Here's what that does. The field sheds water because the courses lap and because they move independently as the roof heats and cools. Cement troweled across the top bridges those laps and glues the courses into one stiff plate. Meanwhile, the cement ages fast. Heat drives the volatile compounds out of it, ultraviolet light oxidizes what's left, the material shrinks and turns brittle. Within a season or 2, you get fine cracks, then the alligatored surface older roofs are covered in. Look at the geometry that creates. A crack at the top of the patch where water can enter, and underneath it a sealed pan the water cannot leave. What was 1 or 2 damaged shingles, a job in the range of $150 to $450, becomes a saturated section. And when a roofer finally opens it, the cemented shingles tear rather than lift, so sound material comes off with them. The correction is boring. The damaged shingles get replaced so the laps are restored. The boundary matters too, since roof cement isn't useless. A small amount under a lifted tab as a deliberate temporary measure is legitimate work for someone equipped to be up there. Troweling it over the top and calling that the repair is a different act. The second fix is where I'd argue more houses quietly lose money than anywhere else. There's a rubber cone around every plumbing vent pipe that comes through your roof. It's called a boot, and its metal base slides under the shingles above and over the ones below, so it belongs to the lap system like everything else. The neoprene collar squeezes the pipe to close the gap, and that collar is the shortest live thing up there. It bakes in full sun, and contractors report the same rough curve. Cracks around 8 to 12 years, most compromised by 15, on a roof built to last 25 or 30. So a perfectly healthy roof hands you a leak at the vent pipe, on schedule, and the crack is small. Small enough that a bead of sealant looks proportionate. It isn't, for a specific reason. Sealant has to bond to a surface that's already cracked, chalking, and oxidized on a joint that keeps moving as the pipe and the rubber expand at different rates, so it releases from behind, where nothing shows on the surface. and this entry sits directly above a pipe running down through a wall or ceiling cavity, so the water it admits never spills into open framing where it might dry. It follows the pipe into a chase. Replacing a boot runs roughly $200 to $600, and a compression sleeve over one that's only surface cracked can buy another 5 to 10 years. Both are work at height for someone equipped. From the ground, the thing to know is that boots are consumable. Past 10 or 12 years, they're the first thing to ask about. Owens Corning standard limited warranty lists flashing, fasteners, pipe boots, and wood decking among the components it does not cover. The shingle maker warrants the shingle. The parts that actually leak are your problem. The third is harder because this is where a careful person starts making the mistake. Every place a roof plane runs into a wall or a chimney, there's a junction, and that's where the residential building code stops making suggestions. It requires flashing at wall and roof intersections and around roof openings, and for a sidewall it specifies base flashing, continuous or step, no less than 4 inches high and 4 inches wide, positioned to send water away from the wall and onto the roof or into the gutter. Notice what the code isn't asking for. Not a seal. A shape, in metal, that carries water landing in that corner back out onto the roof. Caulk feels right at a junction because the gap is visible and caulk fills gaps. But a bead of sealant on a joint between two materials that expand at different rates, in the one place on the roof collecting the most concentrated water, fails from the back side. The bead is still there, still intact to the eye, while the sheathing behind the siding has been damp for 3 years. Flashing repairs there run from a couple $100s to about $2,000, and past that once rotted sheathing joins the bill. The spread depends almost entirely on how long the water was in the wall. Correction and boundary go together here. Flashing gets fixed when the roof or the wall covering is opened by someone who does that work, because the metal has to go under the layers. Sealant does have a role at a junction. A small bead at the top edge of counterflashing sitting on top of correct metal as maintenance. What it can never be is the metal. The fourth happens under pressure, and it damages material that was perfectly sound an hour earlier. The wind is still up. There's a hole, or a section of shingles is gone. Someone gets a tarp over the damage and nails it along the top edge so the wind can't take it. Rational, fast, and every one of those fasteners is a fresh hole punched through good shingles, upslope of the problem, directly in the path of everything that lands on that roof from now on. Then the wind works the tarp, the fasteners elongate the holes they sit in, and by the time it comes off, you can have a field of small leaks in a section that had nothing wrong with it. Done properly, a temporary covering never punctures the sound field above the damage. The tarp edge gets rolled around a batten, the batten screwed down inside the damaged area or below it, and the top of the sheet carried over the ridge where the roof allows, so gravity holds it rather than nails. That's roof work, at height, in bad weather, and it belongs to a crew with fall protection. The American Ladder Institute puts ladder falls in this country at well over 100,000 emergency room visits a year and more than 300 deaths. Here's the version you can perform tonight from inside. Move what's under the leak, contain the water, photograph everything before you touch it. Then call for temporary covering and expect to wait, because after a real storm, everyone is calling. Even the Federal Blue Roof program has had installs starting about a week after a storm, and the Army Corps called that a record pace. That beats a self-inflicted grid of holes, and state insurance regulators back that order. You're expected to protect the property from further damage, that reasonable cost is generally covered, save every receipt, and make no permanent repairs until the insurer has seen the property in its damaged condition. They can refuse to pay for damage repaired before they saw it. The fifth gets chosen by competent, careful, budget-conscious people, and it's the most expensive by a wide margin. It's the decision to cover something rather than open it, and it shows up in two forms. The first is the spray-applied rubberized coating, sold as a one-step answer for leaks. Spray it on, the leak stops, the roof is renewed. The shingle manufacturer's own trade association has a position on this, and it isn't ambiguous. The Asphalt Roofing Manufacturers Association strongly advises against field application of any coating or rejuvenator over installed asphalt shingles. Their reason is the mechanism we've been tracking. A non-permeable coating can create a vapor-retarding layer by sealing the voids around and between the shingles so the assembly loses its ability to dry. They also warn that shrinkage can curl the shingles and loosen the granules, and that coatings may affect the roof's fire classification. Owens Corning's warranty closes the loop, excluding damage to shingles from alterations made after installation and naming coatings among them. The product bought to protect the roof ends the maker's obligation to it. The second form of covering rather than opening is a layover. New shingles installed straight over the old ones or over a deck that's been wet for a season. Cheaper, faster, and here the code draws the line. A roof recover is not permitted where the existing roof or covering is water-soaked or has deteriorated to the point that it isn't adequate as a base for additional roofing, or where 2 or more applications are already up there. The reason sits in the wood. Testing by the Engineered Wood Association found average thickness swell of about 9% for half-inch plywood against about 33% for 7/16 oriented strand board, concentrated at the panel edges and largely irreversible. Wood is generally safe below about 20% moisture content, and sustained wetting into the high 20s is where decay organisms get active. So a deck fed by a small captive leak for 4 seasons is swollen at the seams, softer around the fasteners, possibly decaying, and a layover means nobody looked. Replacing decking runs roughly $2 to $5 per square foot, commonly $2,400 to $8,600. Full replacement of an architectural asphalt shingle roof averaged about $31,800 nationally in the 2025 Cost versus Value report. That's the distance between a $10 tube of sealant and a structural bill, every step of it paid for by a fix that worked. One recover over a dry sound deck is legal and can be sensible. The boundary is that somebody has to verify the deck, and after a leak that means opening it. Now the fact I set aside at the beginning because this is where it changes what you do. Water that gets past the covering doesn't fall straight down. It lands on top of the deck, runs downhill until it reaches a seam or a fastener, goes through and then travels along the underside of the deck or down the side of a rafter. It can travel a surprising distance through that framing before it finds a low point and drops, and it often surfaces at a light fixture because that's the only opening in the ceiling. The stain marks the exit. The entry is upslope of it, and often nowhere near it. That distance between entry and stain explains why rushed repairs miss so often. Someone stands below the mark, projects the location onto the roof, finds the first joint or shingle that looks suspicious, and seals it. Sometimes the guess is right. Often the real entry is farther uphill, hidden where flashing, a fastener, or a penetration interrupts the layers. The visible drip may stop because the rain changed, because the water found a second route, or because the patch briefly covered one part of a larger failure. A dry ceiling after one storm is not proof that the roof above it is repaired. Finding the real entry doesn't require getting on the roof. From inside the attic, with a flashlight standing only on framing or a board laid across it, look for the dark tracks on the underside of the deck and along the sides of the rafters. Wet wood stains in the direction the water ran. Follow those tracks uphill to the highest wet point and you're at, or just below, where it comes in. If the ceiling is cathedral and there's no attic to enter, that path is closed and the diagnosis becomes professional work. Either way, a roofer who walks to the ceiling stain, finds the matching spot on the roof, and applies something is answering the wrong question. Everything I've said about sealing gets one honest exception. While weather is still happening, stopping active intrusion is legitimate. Here's how that goes, in order. Electricity comes first, and this isn't a formality. Water traveling in a ceiling reaches wiring and fixtures, and it conducts. Don't touch the fixture, the switch, or the wet drywall. If you can reach your panel without standing in water and the panel is dry, shut off the circuit feeding that area. If you can't identify which circuit that is, shut off the main. If the panel is wet or you're not certain, leave it alone and call an electrician or your utility. And the half people skip, don't flip that breaker back on the next morning because the dripping stopped. Soaked wiring, fixtures, and boxes need an electrician's eyes before they're energized again. Water sitting inside a junction box shows you nothing from the room. Then the ceiling. A saturated cavity holds real weight, drywall weakens as it takes water on, and the fasteners let go. If you can see a bulge or a sag, get everyone out of the room and keep people and pets away. Do not stand beside it, press it, or reach in to make a hole by hand. Water may be sharing that cavity with live wiring, and an older textured or sprayed finish may contain asbestos. Close the door and let a restoration crew or another qualified professional drain and open it with the electrical and material hazards controlled. A flat stain and a loaded ceiling are two different emergencies, even when they came from the same leak, and no one goes on the roof while weather is happening. Not to look, not for a minute. Wet shingles, wind, and a ladder are how an ordinary evening turns permanent. Keep ladders in any long object at least 10 feet from the overhead service drop where the power line reaches the house, and never use a metal ladder anywhere near it, because contact there doesn't give you a second try. So the order is this: make the area electrically safe. Get people out from under anything sagging. Catch only the water you can reach without standing beneath a damaged ceiling, and leave a bulging one to someone equipped. Photograph everything before it changes. Get temporary covering from a crew with fall protection. Once the weather is out, the wet materials need to dry and the entry still has to be found by following the path uphill. Then repair the flashing, boot, shingle, or deck detail that actually failed, and only after that decide anything about the roof as a whole. That 2 in the morning sound reads differently once you know what the assembly is doing. The tapping in the bucket is unwelcome, but it confirms that water got in, traveled, and surfaced there. It gives you a path to investigate, not a point to patch. The genuinely dangerous night is the quiet one after a good-looking repair, when the ceiling is dry, the bucket is back in the garage, and nobody checked whether the failed detail above was actually rebuilt. If this shifted how you'd handle a stain on the ceiling, the like button puts it in front of the next person standing under one in the dark. Subscribe if you'd rather understand your house than react to it. And in the comments, tell me what fix you inherited. The tar smeared across a slope by a previous owner. The caulk where flashing should have been. The second layer nobody mentioned at closing. Describe what you found and what it cost. That list is how the rest of us learn what to look for before the bucket comes out.